Hey everybody, join me. How's it going? Uh, just felt like a chat today. Not sure if anybody's around. If you are around, welcome. Although I do see right there 0 viewers. I just felt like talking about stuff. There's been a couple of things rolling around in my head lately, comics wise, that I just haven't had an opportunity, or I don't know, enough of one thought to kind of do a whole video. So I thought I'd incorporate a few things in one. The first thing, it's right here. The first thing I wanted to kind of just chat about, again, really more free flowing kind of ideas here. I have seen a couple of people talk about their 2018 collecting goals. I don't currently have a top 10 list of things that I want to get for 2018. And I don't know that I'm going to do one this year, just based on how the year of kind of where this past year of collecting took me. Not that things that are on this list aren't still goals, because even just looking at them now, which I haven't for probably a month or so, there's still some goals on here for sure. I just don't know if I want to. I think I want to take a more broader approach to my collecting. So there's a few things crossed out on here. One of them being the number 1, which was Daredevil number 158. That's kind of where I'm sitting at. As you can see, more notes kind of came up. Note on the side that then got crossed out because I did find the book itself. Not much movement. Still needing Daredevil 168, Doctor Strange 169, Doctor Strange 177. Once I have those Doctor Strange books, those will kind of close off my Doctor Strange collection. Then it's kind of looking at, do I want to get into Strange Tales? Do I want to go down that rabbit hole? Because that's getting into books that are more expensive. For the most part, you're dealing with first appearances. Am I happy with kind of the reprints and stuff that I have, which for the most part I am. And that kind of conversation maybe leads into a bigger topic. Doctor Strange 181 is crossed off of there. Death Rattle Volume 2, there's a book crossed off of there. I believe that can be updated as well. I'm pretty sure I've got a couple of more books from that. I just don't refer to it as much this year. GI Combat number 138, I did end up picking up. And then one of those Miracle Man can get crossed off. Number 11 gets crossed off down there. And that kind of brings me to where I sit with my goals for this year. Kind of the collecting took a turn this last year with seeing my collection spill off in not an enormous way. It had always spilled off of the shelves. It had always kind of existed in a couple of different parts. One part being some boxes over here. Hey, Damien, how the heck are you, man? Nice to see you. Thanks for tuning in. It had always kind of crept onto that realm already. It just started to get to a point where I wanted a lot of these books that were down here to my left, up here on my right. I wanted them incorporated in with the collection. It was about time, since I did this new filing system and this whole new rack and everything. It's really kind of helped me focus quite a bit, because I've really been focused on trying to keep the collection contained to these 2 racks. And there's 4, 8, 16, and 16 is 32 short boxes on here. My collection is sitting just over 4,000, probably around 4,200-ish. So it gave me a chance, especially within the last couple of months, to really take a really hard look at stuff and get rid of a lot of books. I probably got rid of around 600, 700 books total, I would say, as kind of a rough guess, a very rough guess. I haven't actually sat down and gone through those numbers yet. And I honestly don't know if I ever will. Just kind of helps to bring a bit of perspective on what I want to collect, and really looking at things that I want for the new year. There's always going to be titles in my collection, even if I don't. One of the criteria was and wasn't. It was sort of one of my criteria was like, will I reread this stuff? Knowing that it's not always realistic. So that one wasn't like a number one criteria, but it definitely played within the top 3 choices. The biggest thing for me was there was books here that, yes, I did enjoy them. I won't read them again. Do they kind of work in what I'm kind of shooting for collecting wise? Do they fit into that kind of where I want my focus to go? And the answer for a number of the stuff was no, it doesn't, and I got rid of them. The Secret Avengers run, for example, the Franken-Castle. Yeah, no, it's not as bad as you think, Rob. Hello, by the way, hello. It's not nearly as bad as that. It's not a culling as in like, I'm done with it, I'm getting rid of everything. It's just more of a focusing. One of the things that maybe you can see here. Yeah, I mean, this whole row here, this is obviously a big part of my collection. That's a big focus for me. And that's something that is going to stay and has now its own 4 boxes. All of these boxes aren't full. It's just I've left space in each of them to kind of grow the collection a little more in those specific areas. So I think that's kind of something that I just want to keep on with, really taking a look. Thank you very much, Rob. I really like them as well. They turned out sturdy. They're attached to the wall. They're anchored to the wall. They're perfect to fit 4 boxes in each kind of section. It's a perfect fit, even front to back. Like they come up really flush. I don't know. I really like it. It's easy to access things. So it's just for the New Year's, keeping on those same kind of lines, and something that's kind of snuck up on me a little bit. I recently got some Daredevil books. Well, recently as in yesterday, and then one from last weekend as well too, where I kind of had a look at my Daredevil list. And last night, actually, I spent a good chunk of the night, probably an hour, hour and a half, talking to some people here in town, where I've actually worked out some trades, and I'm also going to find some. I've also found a couple of copies of books for really cheap. I bought a Daredevil book online last night. I had a bunch of money sitting in a PayPal account. A Canadian comic book seller, he had a bunch of stuff, including 2 Underground comics as well. He had everything up as a buy it now or make an offer. So I made it an offer across the board, and I got a really good deal on some pretty great books, I think. So I'm looking forward to those come. And then the shipping was really cheap as well because it's Canada. I think the shipping came to $7, and I believe I got 6 books, 6 or 7 books. So something that snuck up on me is that all of a sudden I'm looking at my Daredevil list on the CLZ app, and I'm realizing I have 29 books to go to finish the first 300. After the deals that I made last night, that number now is closer to 20. I think it might be 21 or 22 books left to be able to complete that run of 300. So I think that might end up being something that I really focus on. Yeah, I love the making offers as well too, Rob. They're fantastic. I think that may be something that I focus on a little more. I have some other stuff that's waiting to go up on eBay. I'm still kind of sorting through some books that are out in the hallway out here that are going to be for sale. There's another mini comic convention coming up in March that I'll be doing again. There's 3 of us that want to get a table, so that brings down the cost even less. The table was $50. It's now $60. So between the 3 of us, $20 a piece. That's perfect for the amount of stuff I have left to sell. I think that's a perfect investment to it, where I won't take too much of a hit if I don't sell too much. I'm actually having a lot of luck on this Winnipeg Comic Addicts Facebook group. And I don't know if anybody is into that sort of thing. Yeah, I mean, I kind of came across them through these mini conventions. I saw the guys wearing the shirts, asked them about it. For quite a while, I didn't look into it at all because Facebook is not something that I'm into anymore. I find it, anyway, whatever. I'm not even going to get into it. I just have not been a fan of Facebook. Once I kind of got over that and went on it, I haven't friended anybody. And if I know that there's a couple people who watch videos that have tried to friend me. It's nothing personal. I don't want it to be that. I don't want Facebook to be that for me. I want Facebook to be the comic groups that I'm in. I think I'm in 2 different comic groups. And then I follow a couple of the comic shops here in town, and that's it. I'm using it very, very specifically. I don't really have a page. I'm not posting photos, that sort of thing. All my conversation is happening in the groups. And I'm finding that a lot of fun, actually. They're really good guys. Most of them have doubles or have parts of their collection they want to get rid of. There's quite a number of like $1 starting bid auctions that go on there. I've done now 2 myself, where the bids have started at $1 or $2 and made a nice chunk of change that way. Nothing extraordinary, but enough to kind of take that money and put it back into some books. And that's where it's kind of all leading now that I know some of the guys a little better, because we've met face to face a number of times, talked online. People are starting to send me lists of doubles that they have. Specifically, Daredevil is what people have been sending me. So I've been able to work out some more trades and actually found a few bigger books that are in like reader grade copies that they're willing to sell for cheap, because they've upgraded those books in their own collections and they don't feel as attached to these doubles. So they're willing to pass them along to somebody who's a fan. And it just kind of emphasizes a bit more of a community within the city that I obviously knew that existed, but I'm realizing that it's a lot of guys who are kind of closer to my age as well too, and who have full-time jobs and have families and, you know, wives and children, etc. And this is their hobby. It's still their hobby. And it's a range of people. Some guys are just collectors. Some guys still read. Some guys just go for CGC. So, I mean, it's like any community anywhere. It's like the YouTube community. It's just in my town, which has been great to kind of touch base with people like that and have somebody else to talk comics about, but also talk about, you know, living in Winnipeg, and the conversation kind of goes from there, right? So that's been really a pleasant surprise. And it's worked out. So on that note, I'll kind of show you the latest additions for the Daredevil books into the collection. So the auctions that I have done on the Facebook group, there's the flea market that's really close by me. That's like a 2-minute drive from my house. I've managed to meet up with people there, and last Sunday I went, and I'm going again this Sunday to meet up. Oh, Rasa, hello. How are you? I'm going to go meet up with them again this Sunday and kind of do the swap. So because I know a couple of people that are vendors there, it's a little more casual. So far, I haven't gotten in trouble by the owner of Thirsties, the flea market as a whole, that I'm coming there and selling comics just out of a bag without renting a spot. I try to be really kind of conscious of that and really keep it on the down low. I don't kind of come in and make a big stink of selling comics. I just try to be respectful going into that space. So last Sunday, I ended up buying a stack of books. Maybe we'll start with the books that I bought, and then that'll lead into the big one. So maybe I'll start with the big one. Seeing as Ross is here, seeing as Damien's here. One of the guys I ended up selling books to, Dan is his name. I've known him now for quite a while because I've seen him at little conventions. I've seen him obviously at OMG. It's DaCosta. Good morning. How are you, fellow Canadian? How's it going, man? So I had some books for him and started chatting with him, looking through his boxes. He gave me incredible deals. I think all the books that I bought from him, I can only pinpoint one that I specifically remember buying from him. I think it was $2 or $3 each. They were cheap. And one of the ones he had was a graphic novel from First. From First. Yes, First graphic novel, Elric. And I think $3 is what he charged me for it. When I saw it and started flipping through it, I mean, I have a number of the issues, but I don't have them all. I do have some gaps. When it comes to Eclipse, Pacific, that sort of thing, and First, I do know that they did a lot of graphic novels. I would like to find a bunch of those at some point. So I saw this, and of course, as soon as I saw it and pulled it out, I knew in the back of my head, I'm like, this is gonna be money. This is probably gonna be like $15. So I started in my head talking to myself about what's the max I'm willing to pay before I ask him how much it is. And I'd kind of settled on a number in my head, and then I asked him how much. He said, $3. sold. Great. $3, it's mine. So a hell of a deal. Really nice. I've read very, very little Rasa, very little, because, I mean, as we've talked about before, I like to, especially when it's stuff like this, I know that there's a number of mini-series, and I know that you can read kind of the mini-series on its own. I prefer to read everything from first to last kind of thing. That's just my preference. I have read a couple of the Elric books, the comics rather, and I also read the other Michael Moorcock series, Hawk Moon, is that what it was called? And I honestly, I wasn't crazy about Hawk Moon. Fantasy for me is, as I've spoken about before, it's not my kind of go-to genre. It's not that I'm opposed to it. It's not that I hate it, because if I did, obviously I wouldn't be buying stuff like this. It's just, it's not my thing. It's not kind of in my wheelhouse, but I do like the art. I do like kind of these companies. They always have something more to kind of give, right? So Roy Thomas, P. Craig Russell, and Michael T. Gilbert. Little write-up on them at the back. So the one or two issues of Elric that I did read back then, I liked enough to kind of keep going, especially because when I do find those books, they're next to nothing. They're like $1 book, or they're 50-cent books. They're really, really cheap. If I was having to buy them for kind of like $5 a piece, I wouldn't be going for it at all. It would be something that it would be easy for me to pass over. But because I find them so cheap, I just keep picking them up. And eventually I'm going to have all the runs, and then I will sit and read them. And Corum, that was the other one. Thank you, Damien. Corum, that's exactly right. Because I think that Forster, one of those companies, also did a Corum book as well too. Cash In, yeah. Well, I mean, that very well could be. And as for Elric being his best fantasy idea, for sure. Because even on my hunts, it might be this book right here. Yeah, even on my hunts to kind of value villages and stuff, I did come across this at one point, again for like $1. One of the volumes, and again, I haven't sat and read it. This is The Weird of the White Wolf, book 3 of the Elric saga. So, oh, that's a good stretch right there. So the other things that I managed to pick up from this past weekend at the flea market, another one that kind of excited me. I like the originals. I seem to be finding these reprints, or the classics of Starreach. They seem to be popping up wherever I go here. So I found number 1, and again, for next to nothing. And I know in other forms where I've seen this, whether it be online or although this one I haven't seen out in the wild, it's mostly been online. People do ask for kind of silly money for these books, which again, like, I like them and I love flipping through them and I love the art, and some of the stories are pretty great, but I don't want to pay more than like $1 or $2 for them. A little bit of an ad on the back for some of the original Starreach and Pudge the Girl Blimp. And then seeing some of the ads, so I'll just kind of flip through and show you a couple of things. This is the final story. So the Starreach classics, they just go through the whole series and pick out a few of what they thought were the better stories, and then reprint them in kind of a smaller format. Some of the Starreach was in almost magazine size. There was some that were just a little bit maybe more golden age type of size comic book. So yeah, Dave Sim is this one that I just showed you there. Cosmics. And this one I have read. I have it in, is this the Neil Adams one? Oh no, this is the Starlin one. Yeah, sorry, this is the Starlin. This one I've read the original because the art really jumped out at me. And then here you go. Here's some more. Like, those pages are phenomenal. The colors are phenomenal. Really, really great. So yeah, and it's in really nice condition as well, which is the other thing. So I haven't sat and read, but there is on the inside front cover Star Reach Revisited, so giving kind of a history of why they're doing what they're doing. Yeah, Damien, totally. It was very much a bridge from underground to indie. Yeah, absolutely. Totally agree with that. Yeah, really great. Love the cover. A really good book. I'm glad I found it. And yes, Rasa, the originals are fantastic as well. There's something about, and I think with the originals, you do get that sense even more, to touch on what Damien was saying. You really do get that sense even more that they were trying to do something that wasn't mainstream, but also wasn't underground, was its own thing, was the beginning of its own thing. Something else I picked up last weekend, couldn't pass it up. Ralph Bakshi. I'm a big fan of Ralph Bakshi. Cool World, the adaptation. Again, picked it up because it was dirt cheap and couldn't pass it up. Maybe not one of my favorite Bakshi flicks, but a good one nonetheless. Only found one of the things I was looking for at a couple of different booths. Now that I'm on this Batman animated kick, I've been looking to kind of try to complete as much of that run as possible. I know that there's going to be a couple that are going to be too expensive, but I found this Batman and Robin Adventures number 14. Yeah, Dagger's Tale. So that'll be exciting. Found issue number 3 of 4 of Revenge of the Prowler, which is Truman, Timothy Truman. I have the first 2. It's a 4-issue miniseries, so now I just need issue number 4. I found a second copy of, if I can reach it, I found a second copy of issue number 2. I didn't open it. Again, it was super cheap. This one has a record inside it. The copy that I have, I'd taken the record out of the comic so I could actually listen to it. I was hoping to find another copy that had the record inside it still attached. Not the case with this one, unfortunately, and I should have just opened it when I was there. But again, for $1, it was worth the gamble. So that's those 2. Lucky enough to find another Marvel Collector's Item Classics. I think this cost me $3. This is issue number 4. I love these books a hell of a lot. I've got about 6 of them now. And this kind of leads in what I was saying at the beginning as far as getting into collecting Strange Tales for the Doctor Strange stuff. There's so many other formats that those stories have been released, and this one is a really affordable format. You're getting the reprint. The comic itself is still old, so I'm still getting to the experience of opening up the book and getting that kind of pulpy paper smell. And I'm getting to see the original Doctor Strange stories that they're reprinting. So I feel like I'm still getting it. But I'm a big fan of these as well, Damien. Yeah, they really are great. I think it's a really smart idea for them to do, and something that's really lasted. And again, these pop up for me quite often. I found another in the eBay buying I did last night. He had one of these as well too, number 11 possibly. I can't remember which one. But so anyway, I got another one for dirt cheap coming in the mail. So yeah, that was a really great find for nothing, for peanuts. And then probably one of the finds of the afternoon there were these $2 Defenders books. And they're trashed. There's no doubt about it. Doesn't even matter though. As we all have said at one time or the other, better low grade than no grade. So here's issue number 5 of the Defenders with a really nice cover. And you can actually see, here you go. So I've started stamping. When I get new bags and boards, I just go through and I just stamp the back of the backing board. So really excited to find that one, but even more exciting was finding an issue of number 2 for, again, like $2 or $3, next to nothing. So now I have it. So my Defenders run is coming to completion as well. I'm only working on the first 100. I probably need about another 20 of them or so, 20, 25. So again, I mean, whenever I see these early ones, they're always just more than I'm willing to pay. So holding out is a great idea. No, just the first 100. I've heard that after issue 100, it kind of goes downhill. I mean, we'll see once I get them. My son and I sit and we've looked through some of the comics together. So that's the next series that we want to read together, actually, The Defenders, because we both have an interest in those characters and that sort of thing. So we're going to do that together. Excuse me one sec while I try to get my leg mobile here. Heard just good things for the first 100, and I've heard nothing really good for any of the books after that. So I don't think I'm going to go any further. And it's the same. My thoughts are the same with the Daredevil. When I first started getting into Daredevil, I had quite a wide range of books that I was reading within that first volume. And I remember after 300, even just the covers and the art didn't appeal to me with the Daredevil run. So I just decided, I picked number 300 to be the last one. But yeah, Damien, that's exactly what I've heard. And Johnny, it's the same thing, that they kind of lose something after a bit. So I'm happy letting them go. And that leads us into this that I picked up last week. Issue number 108 of Daredevil. Yeah, I mean, what can I say? It's just another book towards the goal of having it complete. Let's put this one over here. So then yesterday I met up with a couple of guys in town. We all work downtown. So a couple of the people that had won some auctions for me or from me, we met up at lunchtime and did the exchange downtown at the mall. And then later that afternoon, I managed to go for lunch in an area of town that was by a Galaxy, and stopped in at Galaxy and just looked through their box of Daredevils, turned that money that I made off of books that I didn't want anymore into some more Daredevils. So I picked up issue number 109, which was $6, which was right in the range that I'm willing to pay for some of these. Right now, Damien, at the last count before adding these, I was at 271 out of the 300. And La Raza, yes, I have read the Brubaker stuff in graphic novel form, which they're here somewhere. And I loved them. They were great. Sorry, everybody, just give me one sec here. Okay. So issue number 100 is another one I managed to get yesterday for $5. Love the color. Scott was saying, running with thing, that when I posted the pictures on Twitter, that this was his favorite cover. And I agree with him. I really like the blue characters in the background, jumping off of that yellow deep background. Really great. Really great stuff. And then the two big books out of yesterday's haul, and they are in beautiful condition. At Galaxy there, of course. I mean, they're just nice enough to, anything you want, open them up, flip through them, make sure everything's there. Because that was my question. Some had price tags on them, some didn't. Just wanted to assume that if it had a price tag on it, that everything was complete within it. So this is issue number 14 of Daredevil. If This Be Justice. And last but certainly not least, issue number 11. These ones were a little pricier, 25 each Canadian. But again, considering how old they are and what kind of condition they're in, I'm fine paying that, especially when it feels like it's not your money. It's stuff that I sold. Issue 100, Johnny. Yes, absolutely. It's a great one. There's no doubt. You picked up 3 issues of Daredevil today. Which ones did you grab? Yeah, and Rasa, yes, low numbers of Daredevil. That's kind of where that's where things kind of sit with me right now. I think right now I have numbers 9 to 15, so it's 1 to 8 are the lowest that I need right now. And then I've got a pretty big run after that, I think. So I have 9 to 15, then I have 19 to 25, and then 28 all the way to 74. So within that first 100, I've got most of them, and that's where the gaps really fall. And as I was saying at the beginning, 122, 134, and 130. Nice. So happy, but I'm more jealous. Yeah, sorry. I didn't mean to make you jealous. It's exciting kind of getting to that point. And that's the thing with these changes that I've been, I haven't yet walked away from a situation of getting rid of books and thinking that I made a mistake. I just haven't, I felt really good about it. I felt really good about the books that I've left. And I felt really good that it feels like I'm using that money. I'm using my collection to kind of upgrade parts of my collection that I really want to. I have the ability to kind of get into areas that I'm really passionate about and not feel like I'm spending more money to get into that passion. I'm kind of just trimming things. So utilizing my collection already to get to upgrade basically, which is, I just feel really good about it. There's nothing, I haven't had a regret yet. There hasn't been a book that a week later I've sat and wanted to read that book specifically. When it goes, it's gone. I'm fine with it. And I'm getting more comfortable with it, which is allowing me to do things like take a chance with doing a $1 auction, starting bid of $1 auction on the Facebook group. I mean, the books have gone for more than that. Have they gone for as much as I had them priced that I would like to pay, that I would like to sell them for? No, they haven't. But books are going in a pile at a time kind of thing now, which is good. I need to see stuff moving out. And then the couple of comics that I get moving back. As far as Daredevil #1, yeah, I mean, those early ones are going to be a challenge. One of the other ones I'm missing is issue 168, and that one is really pricey. But I mean, I look at what happened this past year with 158. 158 is a pricey book, right? I waited and waited and waited. I got a cheap copy. It was in rough shape, but I have the copy, and that's something else I'm coming to terms with. I just want the copy. When I was at Galaxy yesterday, I was talking to one of the owners, Jeremy, and he was asking about, oh, so which Daredevils are you looking at for? I said, it's kind of within the first 100. He said, because I'm just making a deal with one guy. I'm probably going to be getting issues 34 to 75, which I have all of those. But he says there's another guy, he's got kind of issues 1 to 34. So I've been talking to both of them, Justin and Jeremy at Galaxy, and just saying, you know, when it comes to grade, if it's reader copy, like those are the ones that I want. I don't want something that it's a 9.0 or a 9.8. I don't want that. I don't want CGC stuff. I said my only criteria is that nothing is cut out of it and nothing is ripped out, like the whole cover is intact. But if you have books, if you come across a collection where there's a lot of reader grade copy, I'm your guy. Like I'm the guy that will buy those from you. You know what I mean? Especially when it comes to those big books. So with the amount of stuff that I'm selling and the amount of stuff I still have to sell, for sale, the plan is to kind of try to keep some of that money and put it towards those big books like a Daredevil one. And I have seen a Daredevil one at like $700. I have seen one at $400. Again, it's not that those prices are still in my mind fucking mental. But if I sell enough comics, maybe it becomes worth it as an investment. I will invest in putting that money right back into a Daredevil one. I would love to sit here and just have 1 to 300 in my collection. So in the future, when it does come time to sell stuff off, I can sell an entire Daredevil collection from 1 to 300, you know. Yeah, 2.0 or less for me on Daredevil #1, Johnny says. And then Ross is saying, I might have to go to eBay route with the books I don't want. However, I'm not happy because I have to deal with eBay. Yeah, and that is a tough thing. And I feel for you, Rasa. I mean, we've talked about this before, and I've said it in a video before, that I'm realizing how lucky I am with the comic shops here in town that are willing to do trades, taken advantage of it, or have taken it for granted, rather, is the phrase I'm trying to say. And it really feels to me like a paperback book type of mentality with the comic shops here. Buy books from them, bring them back. They'll give you a little bit of money back so you can buy more books kind of thing, right? It seems like a good business idea. You have a constantly rotating cast of people coming in with more comics that you can then sell. So yeah, I mean, and as far as dealing with eBay, it is a pain in the ass. I mean, I've dealt with them now a number of times, and PayPal itself is a bit of a pain in the ass. You have to make a certain amount of sales before they'll okay the money. Like the money that I made the sale from was like a month ago. It only showed up finally accessible in my PayPal account like 2 days ago, right? So I had to wait quite a while for them to kind of release it. They wanted to see that the transaction went well. They wanted a little bit of time to pass where if the guy was pissed off, if there was anything to do with that. So they kind of held onto the money. I think they told me that you have to make $1,000 worth of sales, I believe. That was when I looked into it about a year ago, though. So I don't know if that's the most up-to-date information. And eBay is just difficult. The thing I would say, if you do go the eBay route, just make sure you click that little box where it automatically starts the auction again and just leave it running. And honestly, yeah, I mean, what advice do I even have for that? I don't even know if I have any advice. Not that you asked for it, but the guys that I saw that I end up buying comics from, they usually have a buy it now price. And then the guy that I was dealing with yesterday, he had the option of make him an offer. So then at least it's open-ended for people. So a buy it now option is a great idea. You may get the people that just click it and buy it now. But if you have that other option, I mean, for example, there was a book that he was selling for $12.99. I made him an offer of $6. He made a counter offer of $7. We came to an agreement. You know what I mean? It at least opens up that communication where you've shown that you're serious about buying the book, and you can have that brief back and forth. And then you just have to have a good system for mailing stuff out, you know. But really search, I mean, even asking at the Comic Mart, Rasa, there must be somebody around who has some little knowledge of a little, even if it's a message board for you locally, or some sort of group. There has to be some sort of group in existence for you online where there's some trading and swapping and selling back and forth. There must be some sort of action like that, I'm guessing. And yes, yeah, DaCosta is working on his Daredevil run. We had a conversation about it the other day too. I'm excited. Maybe this will be both of our years. I can't remember what you said though. Were you working on just the first 300, or you were working on more than that though, weren't you? Maybe we'll both reach our goal this year. I don't know. It really feels like it's attainable. So not to kind of get too much into that, but those are the books that have come across my path recently. A brief word about 2 more that my son and I read last weekend. Oh yeah, another one that I ended up getting that I missed. Now that especially because you're here, Johnny, a Brave and the Bold special with Batman, Deadman, and Sergeant Rock was another one that I came across recently. Volume 1, all 380 issues. Okay, cool. Yeah, the shop which deals with buying is quite far away, like a 1-hour drive, so that just puts me off for sure, Rasa. But I mean, it might be worth it if you, and I don't. I'll rephrase that. Never mind. You're on maternity leave. You have other things that I understand that things are a little more difficult, possibly, especially now. But I mean, it might be worth looking into it. You never know, especially even with emails beforehand. Maybe you can send scans of some things. And so instead of going out there and taking a gamble, there's a little more of back and forth done before you show up on their doorstep. So when these kind of things pop up, I'm a huge fan of Deadman. I'm a huge fan of Spectre, and I always have been. And going through my boxes of Deadman and Spectre, I love adding these kind of one-off type of deals as well. I mean, I do love Batman as well. Sergeant Rock, I've never been into as much. I don't know now, though, with my newfound love of our fighting forces and GI combat and stuff, maybe I'll have to give the Sergeant a little more of a read. I don't know if it's an area I want to open up to myself, though, as far as collecting war comics. I want to stick to my guns here, so to speak. But I'm always happy to include stuff like this in there, appearances with other superheroes and stuff. So that was a cool find. I don't remember how much it is, and it's unusual. I usually write them on the back. Usually the back. I think Rasa got one of them in her collection. Yeah, this is what I usually do for my own system. I don't know if that's coming up there. Where I bought it, when I bought it, how much I paid for it, and then of course the stamp on the back. I'd just like to keep track of that, just for things down the line. If I resell stuff, I kind of know what I've put into it, Not that I expect to get that exact money back, but at least then I can feel a little more comfortable with, you know, selling that book 4 years from now for $20 instead of 25 if that came up to happen or whatever. The final thing, Adam kind of, Dr. Monkeybot had kind of set me off on this. He was talking about the sci-fi book that he got with a collection of art, and just kind of some of the areas that he's been traveling down lately when it comes to his collecting habits and things that he's found on his hunting. This book has been on my shelf for a number of years. It hasn't ever had a dust jacket, which is why it cost, what, $7, $5, something like that. Cheap. Yeah, $7. It's called, apparently there was a second volume as well too. It is A Pictorial History of Science by David Kyle. He has a second book. I found both of them on eBay. I have a couple of them bookmarked or on a watch list because they are fairly cheap, and they look in beautiful condition. But this book has been with me for a long time, and I just love every once in a while flipping through it. It talks mostly about the pulps and paperbacks, but they do get into magazines and comics and just kind of how people have used sci-fi over the years. Just going to move that lamp in different areas. Let's see. Yeah, did you see it? I stamped the damn book. You're darn tootin' I did. Absolutely I did. So I figured we'd just flip through a couple of these. I just love the art associated with this older sci-fi. It's always, I don't know, I find it very, it's just really cool to flip through. Really gives you a little, it gives me a little boost anyway, creatively and stuff. So yes, thank you very much. You love the stamp. I love it as well too. I'm really excited that I did it. Every time I sit down now and start stamping backing boards, incredibly happy that I just bit the bullet and did it. And when I stamped the first actual book, I don't have all my books stamped, but I kind of went through the collection and stamped stuff that I knew that I would be keeping the rest of my life. And if it did ever leave my hands, I like getting those little nuggets. I came across, as a quick aside, I came across a letter in one of the Daredevils. It might have been Daredevil number 11. I posted it on Twitter about, there was a letter from somebody who lived in Winnipeg. A couple of the books that I bought recently have a stamp. What I've found out, this individual stamp was somebody who did live in Winnipeg, and I met the guy who bought his collection, or who bought a chunk of his collection and was reselling them. And I asked him a little bit about it. He's like, he's just this collector that I knew. That didn't sound like they had a really deep friendship or anything. It's just a guy that he had come across when he was buying collections, buying books around the city. And this guy had all his comics individually stamped on the inside, on the first page, first or the second page, depending. So I've got a couple of books from his collection now in mine. I like that idea of you're getting the history, and you're getting that look at, like, yeah, somebody really loved this book. Somebody put their stamp in it. So I wanted the same for me. I wanted my stamp in these books. So eventually when they head out into the world, into other people's collection, they can see from the and go, what does that even mean? Who is this person? Why would somebody go through the trouble of getting a stamp made? I don't know. I kind of almost want to get a year stamp as well too, so then underneath it I can just do a classic kind of 2018 style that have the little dials on it and make that nice stamping kind of ka-chunk sound. I think would be great. Anyway, the letter in the comic, actually, it's his address that's listed in the comic is probably about a 5-minute drive from where I currently live, just down Portage Avenue. I did a little bit of searching online. I looked up his name and Winnipeg, and unfortunately, if it's the same person, he passed away almost exactly a year ago in Regina. It was the first hit that came up, and multiple hits. And when I looked at when he was born and how old he was and stuff, it did make sense. He probably would have been about 11 or 12 years old when it came to writing that letter to Daredevil number 11. And again, it just, as sad as that is, it's that he passed away. I mean, there's a part of me that wished he still lived in Winnipeg and I could find him and, show him the letter and just talk to him about it. That history is a big part for me. And that's something that I've been thinking about a lot lately. I finished watching Twin Peaks: The Return. And for me, there's a lot of David Lynch's work always has a lot of nostalgia in it. This show has really sat with me now over these couple of days. I'm rewatching the original series with my wife. She's never seen it. We're about 6 or 7 episodes in. But there's something about nostalgia and how it can be damaging, how it can be comforting, all that sort of stuff. But nostalgia aside, I still have this real sense of a history with this stuff. And even with Underground Comics, I remember Fogel at one point said to me, like when there's been a number of times where I've had one of the Underground Comics come through my collection and the information that's in the book or on Comics Joint doesn't jive with the comic that I have in my hand. So I've kind of sent him information and kind of asked, where does this sit within it? And there's been a couple of incidences where it's been, oh, I've never seen that before. You know what I mean? And he kind of just kind of made an offhand comment, not meant in any sort of negative way or anything, just about you're quite the historian. And I like that kind of thing. I like the history that's with him. I like finding out the history with this stuff. About the people that make them, sure, but there's something to me more with like the fan base. When I be in those videos, there's something about reading the letter from the editor. There's something about reading the letters pages and trying to figure out what the world was like then for the fans reading it. Yeah, sure, it's interesting to hear what it was like for the creators. Mainly that Comics Journal trashed their book at the time, which still surprises me. I don't know, there's a connection with that stuff too, though. There's a connection with all that history. And I kind of wish he was still alive and lived in the city, because it would have been great to go and I just picked this up the other day. I saw this letter in there. I hunted you down. Is this your letter? How old were you? What, just kind of talk to him about it. Or I don't know if I'd ever have the courage to actually do that, but it's in the back of my mind anyway. That's such a great idea. I'm going to rip you off now, T. Have at it. Please, I encourage everybody to make stamps, to get stamps made. How much is the custom stamp? Honestly, Rasa, I wish I could remember. I know I kept the invoice because that's also part of what I do with some of this stuff. I did keep the invoice and file it away, and I just can't remember off the top of my head where I filed it. I don't think it was that much. I don't want to say a price in case I'm completely off base. I want to say around the $50 mark, somewhere around there. It really varied, though. The prices went from very, very cheap to kind of really expensive. And obviously that had a lot to do with the size of the stamp. It didn't really have anything to do with the complexity of the stamp. It was more to do with how big of a stamp you wanted. And even my stamp is not accessible. I'm not sure where it is right now. Somewhere around here. Oh, right here. So here's the actual stamp itself. And they give you a little label. That's the place that I can mark, I believe that says. The place that I use. And again, it just so happens it's probably about a 5-minute drive. And then there it is. So all I did was just send them, well, I'm seeing it forwards. You're probably seeing it backwards. All I did was send them the file, and that's all. It didn't need to be any special format. They said JPEG is good enough, whatever you have, just something that they can then transfer it and set it onto a block. And then I bought a couple of ink pads from them as well, one black and one red, just to have a couple of them standing by. And just a great, I don't know, I think it's an interesting thing to do. Continuing that lineage. I dig it. Have you ever written a letter to comic creators? I personally never have. Psychological anchors, I'm all for nostalgia. Yeah, I hear you, Johnny. And I mean, I have a little bit of a thing with nostalgia, good and bad. I've never written a letter to comic creators ever. And I'm not really sure why. There's not really a story attached to that. I just never have. Not at the end yet, but it's getting close there, Samuel. Hello. Even when it comes to meeting musicians and stuff, it's something that I'm not always comfortable with, because I know that I have a little bit of that fanboy that comes out of me when I meet these people sometimes. For example, I met Masami Akita, who is a noise artist, goes by the name of Merzbow, who I love, and I've loved for going on like 25 years now. I've listened to his stuff. He came through town a number of years ago to play at a club, and of course I was there. A good friend of mine actually opened up for him, which was fantastic as well. But to see him live, it's kind of one of those moments where I put a lot into art. Like when there's art that really resonates for me, it really resonates deeply. And I'm not by no means saying I'm the only person. I'm sure it happens to a lot of people. But a lot of stuff, there's a lot of art type of stuff where there's music, whether it's painting, whether it's comics, that sort of thing, whether it's filmmaking, that has had such an impact on me that I can't there's probably a part of me that doesn't want to meet the person as well in case they turn out to be dickheads. But yes, it's an interesting effect. So then going to meet him, he was literally leaving the club. I was hammered and kind of went to it was a fenced off area where you could drink outside. And I kind of just talked to him through the fence. And I think it was okay. I probably came across a bit kind of, maybe he stood a little closer because there was a fence in between us. Who knows if there was no fence in between us, but I don't know. It's not something that's come up though, writing to comics. I'm not as up to date. Hello, Comic Book Aesthete, by the way. Thank you very much for joining in. New wave of European artists like Martina Perillo, Del Otto. Del Otto, I recognize the name. Honestly, my recognition of names and putting them in the right place is not the best at the best of times. So reading those names out loud, I don't know them. So I have no thoughts on them. There's the short answer to that. Just to finish up, flipping through this book before we got to all this other stuff. Again, there's just a lot of really good reference material in here, and just a lot of fantastic visual style to it, as they kind of go through the eras of science fiction. Otto is Otto cover artist. I don't know who those guys. Yeah, okay. We'll let that conversation bubble a little, and then you do get into some things like Killraven. Amazing stories, more of the kind of pulp and paperback and comic section here, but still, it's the illustration that sells me on this book. It's hard to see in front of this enormous book. I just want to flip to a couple that really have always stood out to me every time I go to this book. Oh, here's one. If anybody's a fan of Monster Magnet, Dopes to Infinity. Was that the album? Johnny, you might be the guy that knows this in this room right now. I believe we've talked Monster Magnet before, but that page usually jumps out at me. And then the other one that does, which when I was just flipping through this yesterday, still is a beautiful illustration, I think. And I also like the layout of it in this book because it's kind of an oversized book. You get a real... Just give me, yeah, here we go. These two pieces, but specifically this one here. I mean, look at that stuff. It's a great use of a page, first of all. I kind of wish they had just this image on these two pages by itself. But those two always jump out at me. And another one that I flipped by while I was getting to that section. These two pages as well. This one specifically, apparently it's somebody kind of mimicking that older style. Monster Magnet, you missed the question. I'll show you one more time there, Johnny. It's SF18. That image right there being used for a Monster Magnet cover. I think it was for Dopes to Infinity, but or parts of that image anyway. I'm pretty sure were used for a Monster Magnet. Did a lot of interiors for Marvel a few years back. The latest that I can recall is Family Business Amazing Spider-Man. Bulletproof Comics is one website that sells Del Auto exclusive variants. I guess they paint with oil. That's very cool. And then mostly covers now. That's where the money is. Yeah, for sure. That's where the money is in covers. Scott's Collectibles UK does the exclusive variants for other European artists like Perillo and Mattina. Awesome. I'll have to look into those names. And yeah, painted covers are incredible. A couple more images. This is from Jeff Hawk by Sidney Jordan. And then Garth, or Brick Bradford, rather, sorry. Before Flash Gordon, da-da-da. There we go. Some kind of images from some sci-fi comics. Yeah. Treasure trove. So I really would like to get the second book that he did, just for the beauty of flipping through these suckers. So as you can see on this side, 1930 on and up. So he just goes through kind of decades and where science fiction sat within the public and the parts that it played. And what was I watching? I was watching The Secret History of Comics, and they were talking about Siegel and Schuster and how impactful the creation of Superman was. These pages are freaking beautiful as well, too, with a still from one of my all-time favorite movies, Forbidden Planet, because of Lewis and B.B. Barron's soundtrack. They were talking about the impact that Superman had on the industry at the time, because everything was kind of sci-fi or Western related. Nobody had seen anything like this. You know, a superhero just didn't exist. And when it took off like gangbusters. And even in that little segment, they showed a couple of covers of some of these sci-fi and horror type books. And even getting that little glimpse was really great. Here we go, some more. 1930s cool. Been checking out older noir stuff lately. That's awesome. It's not here. Somewhere up there. I have a collection of old noir stories, including the Todd Browning Freaks, where that movie idea came from. That original short story. It's around somewhere. I would love to show you the cover to kind of highlight it for you. It's a great genre to get into, especially the old noir stuff. And if you can find those kind of collections of short stories, it's a really great place to dig in. I mean, nothing beats the language they used, especially when it came to kind of the crime stuff. The language that you're getting there is a little more authentic, I guess. It's because it's kind of the world that's written about is kind of the time, and then the language that they're using is of the time as well, which just adds that extra depth in it for me. Nothing beats monochromatic horror pages for me. I need to hit up the magazines again. Yeah, man, some of it is just beautiful stuff. Just seeing you just really get an appreciation for their art. You're not as distracted by the colors. The colors as well as much as I love them and how much they work for me. It's nice to see the black and white stuff, just to see their inking work and everything. Really, really great. Okay, guys. This was the last thing I was going to talk about briefly. Das Pastores. I found a couple of one-shots that he did. Wolverine one-shots. This was, if you remember the video, if you saw it, I was talking about Thor, the Jason Aaron run, and there was a one-shot with Thor and a dress. Pastores did the art for that. And then he did the art for a kind of bande dessinée that I have upstairs. I kind of looked him up online and got a listing of a bunch of comics that he did, and managed to find these two. Both of them are one-shots. This one is amazing. This one is good, but if you're curious and if you do see this one, my son and I both loved this story. It was great, and I mean his art. It's just as good on the interiors as it is on the covers. He's got a really unique style. Yeah, something about it that really, really appeals to both of us. So that was great to kind of find these two. They seem to take place in the same world. I didn't actually look to see what year each of these came out, and it's not immediately evident by the front cover. Anyway, it feels like they came out to one another, because it almost feels like they're a continuation. This one and then this one. This one begins in a very similar terrain where this one leaves off. So it does feel kind of back to back. And speaking of this, Jane Foster Thor, he also did a single issue of the Jane Foster Thor run as well too, I think, Rasa. And yes, my son and I have read, oh God, sorry, I didn't mean to say that part out loud. We did read some Jane Foster Thor books, and we loved them. And that's what kind of sparked us to, instead of getting full bore into her Thor series, let's go back, because I had a bunch of the Jason Aaron Thor run, and I said, let's try to read it all up to this point and see what happens leading up to this. Not that we felt like we missed a lot by reading those stories. We could still get into them really easily and both really loved them. But we wanted to kind of, let's read the build up to how he lost the hammer and how she gained it. And so we're almost done that Jason Aaron Thor run. And then we'll kind of keep moving with that forward. I'm really excited to get back into the Jane Foster Thor books, though. They were amazing, and I kept up with them. Even though we weren't reading them, I still would buy them and kind of hoard them, just so when we all get there, we don't have to do too much digging. So yeah, I'm looking forward. Damian Pastoris, I drool thinking about that one-shot Thor. Good to know what else he's done. Yeah, man, I think it's called Comic Vine is what the website is called. I seem to always get that site come up when I search for artists. And it's really great because it does give you everything that they've done in comics. And then when you click on the individual cover, it'll show you exactly which issues, and then it tells you when they came out and stuff, and you get a nice cover shot, which makes it easier to find them. There's just that recognition. If the particular artist that you're looking for didn't do the cover, for example. In this case, it was easy. They jumped right out of the bin at me as I was flipping through. There was no need to even second guess it. And that Thor one-shot was just so great. I really, really loved that story a lot. Mid-2000s is when DaCosta is saying, and that totally makes sense for those two books being released. And Jason Aaron Thor has been so great all along, except the one Elf arc. Yeah, I agree. And that's the one we're just thankfully finished and kind of a little bit past that now. After stopping reading Marvel, Jane Foster Thor was something I'm really missing to be reading. Yeah, totally. Some of those books, and that's always been the thing, and it'll always be a bit of a nagging feeling when every once in a while, because of not reading current books, I'm just reminded of some of the books that I really was enjoying, but it's just not a possibility. It's just not realistic. But yeah, I don't think that ever goes away, Rasa. You're always going to miss some of those books, but wait enough, and I'm sure a lot of that stuff will end up in 50-cent bins. I think that covers everything I wanted to talk about. Thanks very much. I really appreciate you all hanging out. It's been really nice to talk to all of you. Yeah, that's it. Probably a week or two. I'm hoping over the next couple of weeks, I can really dig into some more of those Daredevils there, Johnny. I'd love to see some videos from you as well, too. I'm looking forward to the day where I can do let's just flip through the first 300 Daredevil comics together, shall we? And we can flip through them. I'm really excited about that. Have a good lunch. Have a good afternoon. Have a good evening, Rasa. Thanks very much, everybody, for joining me, and we'll talk to you. This is always my favorite part of the Adam ones, when he tries to shut things down and pushes wrong buttons, and we get that little extra at the beginning or at the end when he's trying to figure things out and his finger comes up to the screen and stuff. That's always the best part. See you later.